The conversation around Baltimore right now feels different. And you can sense it every time the discussion turns to the playoff picture. For the first time in several seasons, the conference door looks wide open, and that alone changes the entire mindset of a team that has been fighting inconsistency while still keeping itself alive. With traditional powerhouses already out of the equation, the path no longer feels blocked by the same familiar faces. And that reality creates a strange mix of urgency and opportunity for the Ravens. This is not about waiting for help or hoping for chaos. This is about understanding that if Baltimore handles its business over the final stretch, everything resets the moment they punch that ticket. When people look back at past championship runs in Baltimore, they often remember how imperfect those teams looked late in the regular season. There were doubts, there were rough patches, and there were moments when nothing felt guaranteed. Yet once those teams found their way into the postseason, momentum became a weapon. That is the comparison some fans are leaning on now, not because history repeats itself perfectly, but because it reminds everyone that getting in is the hardest part. Once you are in, the pressure shifts, the slate is wiped clean, and every opponent has to deal with you on equal footing. The immediate focus, though, is on a young and aggressive New England defense that brings energy and speed, especially late in the year when teams are physically worn down. This is not a matchup Baltimore can sleepwalk through. It is one of those games where discipline matters, where mistakes are magnified, and where falling behind early can turn into a long night. At the same time, there is an understanding that this is the gateway back into that control your own destiny conversation. Win, and the Ravens keep steering their own path. Lose, and suddenly the math gets complicated in a hurry. What has added another layer of intrigue is the way the schedule lines up over the final weeks. Depending on how results fall, there is a very real scenario where one of the upcoming games becomes meaningless in the standings, while still being massive in terms of physical toll. That has reignited the age-old debate about rest versus rhythm. Do you protect bodies at all costs? Or do you keep the engine running because football is a game built on timing and repetition? Baltimore has lived both sides of that argument in the past, and the scars from rust showing up at the worst possible time are still fresh in the minds of many. The idea of resting starters sounds logical on paper, but football rarely follows clean logic. These are violent, emotional games, and taking the foot off the gas can sometimes do more harm than good. For this Ravens team in particular, the offense has struggled at times to find consistent flow, and that makes the idea of extended rests feel risky. Timing between the quarterback and the offense, especially late in the season, is not something you want to gamble with unless the reward clearly outweighs the risk. That is why the middle ground has become such a popular talking point. Instead of a full shutdown, the concept of controlled exposure has started to make more sense. You allow key players to get live reps, feel the speed of the game, and stay mentally sharp, but you also limit their workload to reduce unnecessary wear. It is not about sending a message or proving toughness. It is about managing a roster through a brutal stretch while keeping eyes firmly locked on the bigger picture. On offense, the discussion naturally centers on the most impactful pieces. The quarterback position, especially, brings up memories of past seasons where rust became a factor after time away. There is also the reality that certain veterans carry a heavier physical burden week after week, and giving them a breather could pay dividends later. Balancing that with the need to maintain offensive identity is the tightrope this coaching staff must walk. Defensively, the conversation shifts slightly. This unit thrives on aggression, communication, and trust. Taking too many pieces off the field can disrupt that chemistry, particularly against division rivals who know how to exploit hesitation. At the same time, there are cornerstone players whose health is critical if Baltimore wants any chance of making noise beyond the regular season. Picking and choosing where to ease off becomes less about position groups and more about individual snap management. All of this circles back to the reality that everything may still come down to the final week. In that scenario, there is no room for complacency, no space to coast, and no excuse for being mentally unprepared. Games in Pittsburgh have a way of punishing teams that show up anything less than fully locked in, regardless of records or momentum. That alone makes the idea of completely resting players feel unrealistic, because the margin for error in that environment is razor thin. Beyond the playoff math and scheduling quirks, there is also the matter of identity. This Ravens team, at its best, is physical, relentless, and committed to imposing its will. That identity shows most clearly when the run game is clicking and the offense stays on the field. Time of possession, sustained drives, and wearing down defenses have always been part of Baltimore's blueprint, and when that disappears, the entire operation feels out of sync. Recent performances have reminded everyone just how dangerous this offense can be. When the ground game is featured, explosive runs, efficient carries, and a quarterback who can punish defenses with his legs change how opponents are forced to line up, it opens throwing lanes, simplifies reads, and keeps pass rushers honest. That balance is not just a philosophical preference. It is a practical necessity for this roster. The emphasis, though, is not simply about calling more runs. It is about execution on early downs, winning at the line of scrimmage, and converting third downs to extend drives. When Baltimore stays ahead of the chains, the entire playbook stays open. When they fall behind because of sacks or penalties, the offense becomes predictable, and even the best run schemes lose their impact. That situational awareness is what separates a functional offense from a dominant one. There has also been discussion internally about communication and message discipline. Late season football is as much mental as it is physical, and unnecessary noise can become a distraction. When conversations about play calling or philosophy spill into the public space, it creates questions that do not need to be answered in the middle of a playoff push. Focus, alignment, and trust inside the building matter more now than ever as the Ravens move through this stretch. The margin between success and disappointment is thin. Every snap carries weight. Every decision is magnified, and every adjustment has ripple effects. The opportunity is real. The path is challenging, and the sense of urgency is impossible to ignore as Baltimore fights to keep its season alive and position itself for what could come next as the pressure continues to build. The conversation naturally shifts toward how this team sustains momentum without losing itself in the process. Baltimore has already seen how fragile rhythm can be when execution slips, and that is why the emphasis now is on possession, patience, and purpose. When the Ravens control the ball, they control the emotional flow of the game, and that has been the clearest indicator of their success. Long drives do more than produce points. They rest the defense, frustrate opponents, and allow the offense to dictate terms instead of reacting. What stands out from recent games is how effective the run game becomes when the offense stays on schedule. Explosive numbers on the ground are not just statistics to admire. They are proof of physical dominance. When running backs consistently gain positive yardage, defenses are forced to compress, linebackers hesitate, and safeties creep closer to the line. That ripple effect opens opportunities everywhere else. It simplifies reads for the quarterback and creates favorable matchups outside. Even if the passing volume is not overwhelming, at the same time, there is an understanding that balance does not mean predictability. Baltimore cannot afford to become one-dimensional, especially against disciplined defenses that thrive on tendencies. The threat of the run is what makes everything else work. But it has to be paired with timely throws and smart decision-making. Efficiency, not flash, becomes the priority late in the season. It is about stacking first downs, managing the clock, and finishing drives with points instead of settling for field position battles. Another key element in this stretch run is trust and depth. The physical toll of the season is real, and no team survives December football without leaning on the entire roster. Younger players stepping into meaningful roles are no longer a luxury. They are a necessity. When those players contribute, it allows veterans to stay fresh and reduces the risk of breakdowns in crucial moments. The Ravens have invested heavily in building that depth, and now is the time when those investments are tested. Defensively, the identity remains rooted in speed and physicality. This unit feeds off pressure and thrives when it can attack rather than react. Early stops set the tone and create favorable situations for the offense, but that requires discipline. Missed assignments and poor tackling can undo an entire game plan in a matter of seconds. Late-season opponents capitalize on mistakes, and there is little margin for recovery once momentum swings. Communication on that side of the ball becomes even more critical when rotations increase. Fresh legs help, but only if everyone is on the same page. The Ravens have prided themselves on defensive cohesion for years, and maintaining that standard now is non-negotiable. Every adjustment, every check, and every alignment must be clean, especially in hostile environments where noise and pressure complicate everything. Special teams also quietly play a massive role in games like these. Field position, coverage discipline, and situational awareness can decide contests that come down to a single possession. In tight playoff races, Hidden yards matter. A well-executed return or a perfectly placed kick can tilt the field, just enough to create opportunity, while a lapse can instantly flip momentum the other way as the regular season winds down. Emotions naturally run high. Players feel the weight of every snap, coaches feel the urgency of every decision, and fans sense that each game carries postseason consequences. Managing that emotion is part of the challenge. Teams that play tight often make mistakes, while teams that channel urgency into focus tend to rise in these moments. Baltimore's ability to stay composed while playing with edge will be a defining factor in how this story unfolds. There is also the mental grind of facing familiar opponents who know your tendencies and your weaknesses. Division matchups are rarely clean or comfortable, and they often come down to who executes better in critical moments. Preparation becomes more about details than surprises. The Ravens understand that nothing will be given to them, especially on the road, and that every advantage must be earned through discipline and effort. Momentum is a tricky concept in football. It can feel unstoppable one weekend, disappear the next if fundamentals slip. That is why the focus remains on process rather than results. Winning is the goal, but how you win matters just as much when you are building towards something bigger. Consistency in approach, clarity in roles, and accountability across the roster create a foundation that can withstand adversity. The Ravens have been here before in different forms, carrying both the confidence of past success and the lessons of past disappointment. That experience does not guarantee anything, but it does provide perspective. They know how quickly seasons can end and how narrow the window can be when opportunity presents itself. That awareness fuels the urgency without tipping into panic. Every week now feels like a playoff game, not just because of the standings, but because of what is being built internally. The team is shaping its identity, refining its strengths, and confronting its weaknesses in real time. There is no perfect version of this group, only a resilient one that continues to adjust and respond as Baltimore pushes forward. The path remains clear even if the outcome does not. Take care of business, stay connected, and play to the strengths that define this franchise. The opportunity is still there, the margin is still thin, and the story is still being written as this team fights to extend its season and prove what it can become when everything is on the line. Before we dive in, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Your support keeps us bringing you the latest news on the Baltimore Ravens. And hey, drop your take in the comments below. We want to hear from the flock. The NFL world is buzzing with speculation as whispers grow louder. Could Derrick Henry, the unstoppable force of the Tennessee Titans, be heading to Baltimore? Sources close to team insiders hint at behind-the-scenes conversations that have Ravens fans dreaming big. Henry, known for his combination of brute strength, incredible speed, and the uncanny ability to break through defenses as if they were mere paper, would be nothing short of a game-changer for a Ravens offense already loaded with talent. Imagine the possibilities. Lamar Jackson orchestrating plays while Henry bulldozes through linebackers. Defenses scrambling to contain one of the league's most dominant runners. The mere idea has already sparked excitement throughout the city. Social media channels are flooded with mock-up jerseys and highlight reels as fans envision the perfect storm of Jackson and Henry on the field together. The Ravens front office has historically been aggressive in pursuing top-tier talent, and Henry fits the mold of a player who can instantly shift the balance of power in the AFC. If this rumor bears any truth, it would mark a seismic shift in the league's landscape, potentially forcing rival teams to rethink their defensive strategies entirely. Industry insiders caution that nothing is finalized, but the mere notion of Henry in purple and black is enough to set imaginations on fire. The potential synergy between his physical dominance and Baltimore's disciplined, hard-nosed play style is tantalizing. Could we be witnessing the dawn of a new era for the Ravens? One thing is certain, conversations among fans, analysts, and sports commentators alike are heating up, and every casual mention of Henry's name in connection with Baltimore seems to fuel the frenzy further. If Henry does indeed land in Baltimore, the ripple effect would be immense, not just on the field but across merchandise sales, ticket demand, and even national media attention. The excitement is palpable, the speculation endless, and for now, Ravens Nation is holding its breath, dreaming of what might be the most thrilling off-season development in recent memory. Derrick Henry to Baltimore may still be a rumor, but it's one that has already captured the imagination of an entire city. That's it for this update. If you enjoyed the video and want to stay in the loop with exclusive news on our Baltimore Ravens, make sure to subscribe and hit that like button. We'd love to hear what the flock thinks. Drop your thoughts in the comments. See you in the next one.